Hello, everybody. Welcome to Focus Friday today. My name's Lincoln Archibald. I'm one of the managing directors for Partners in Business. We've got an excellent forum for you guys today. We're excited to have Raul Deju with us today, but I'm actually going to let Tim Barney introduce Raul for us. Tim is actually one of our own. He's an Aggie here. He spent 16 years in energy solutions in various roles, including COO. He retired from Energy Solutions in 2008 and is currently managing director of Banyan Partners, a private equity firm. And he's actually going to be our speaker for the Huntsman Venture Forum, in case you haven't heard about that, on the 23rd of March. So we'll turn the time over to Tim first. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here today. I love coming back to Utah State. Always makes me happy. I'm excited to be here and have the opportunity and the honor to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Raul Deju. I've had the pleasure of knowing Raul for many years. I first met Raul over 12 years ago. I had the great privilege and honor to work with him for several years at Energy Solutions, a nuclear services firm that was based in Salt Lake. Raul served as the president of Energy Solutions, and I worked with him on the executive management team. I was amazed at his intelligence, work ethic, integrity, and ability to make difficult things seem simple. He had a unique ability to motivate people and often took a personal interest in their success and career development. Currently, Raul is a senior partner at Bright Star Capital Partners, a New York-based private equity firm, and the chairman of Texas Water Supply Company. Raul was named one of the top 25 Latinos in the San Francisco area and has received commendations for his philanthropy. He has been the author of 7 books and over 200 peer-review articles. His newest book, Got Mojo, was published in July 2016 and has sold over 80,000 copies. Raul truly has a passion for inspiring young people to follow their entrepreneurial dreams. I'm excited to have Raul here today at Utah State to discuss his thoughts on how we can make a better tomorrow. Please join with me in welcoming Dr. Raul Deju.
Thank you, Tim. Can you guys hear me? How can I compete with the beautiful sky out there? This is going to be tough. Happy to be here today. I have a great appreciation for the state of Utah. Spent a lot of time here at Energy Solutions at another company called Headwaters, and I especially enjoyed the Olympics, the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to chat with you about a question that was posed to me by a gentleman by the name of Michael Milken. Michael has a long history of different roles, but he's essentially a philanthropist today, and he's a deep thinker. And he had evaluated some notes that he'd gotten from, again, a very bright guy, a gentleman in England, Stephen Hawking. Everybody knows Stephen Hawking, who came up with the idea that the Earth is in trouble. And the only solution is to colonize Mars. And we better colonize Mars in 100 years because it's going to be over here. And I said, Michael, I'm not going to Mars. I don't have any desire to get on a rocket and go one-way ticket to Mars. You know, there's a lot of people that have said, you know, things are going to end tomorrow. The world's going to die. So my lecture today, or my presentation today, is a refutal to Steve Hawkins. And I want to start by asking you guys a question. Is the world getting better, worse, or about the same? How many say better? This is an anomalous group. In a survey last year, 8% said better. This was done in New York City, so, 70% said worse, 16% said not changing, and 6% didn't know. So my comment to you is, I truly believe the world is definitely getting better. And I think the reason people find it so hard to accept that is that they always see the past as better than it was. And they look at the past about this long. And the present, it's usually worse than it really is. And the future is kind of shady. It's not resolved. So when you think about that, yeah, you get depressed. And the quoting of Marcel Pignol is that indeed this is wrong, and I'm going to demonstrate it to you. Now, I don't like to have quotes from philosophers or people that are have a lot of artsy stuff on it, so I'll do some plain quotes here. Anybody here doesn't know Dan Brown? Da Vinci Code, Inferno. Well, this is a quote that he has in his newest book, which is also a bestseller, called Origin. The next few years in human development will be shocking. I agree with that. Will be disruptive. Yep. And wholly unimaginable. And now I'm going to show you, I'm going to put this in the context of history and kind of frame you where I think the world has moved from its beginnings, where it's going, and where are the opportunities for us. The opportunities mostly for you guys, because I'm at the end of the rainbow. But you guys are at the beginning. And so what are the kinds of things that we can do to make Steve Hawkins be wrong? I mean, I still want to go to Mars. I still want to see some people go to Mars, I should say. But this Earth is here, and this Earth is a great place. So let me start by going back a long way from now. And, oops, I got to go one more. And let's start thousands of years ago. And I'm going to read you a message. How many people here know where Chaldea is? Have any idea? Anybody? Mesopotamia. Chaldea is at the center of Mesopotamia. This is an inscription from the king of Chaldea 5,800 years ago. Now that's the tomb, and let's read it together. We have fallen upon evil times, and the world has waxed very old and wicked. Politics are very corrupt. Does that bring you memories of today? Children are no longer respectful to their parents. He was an elder. He was a king. He was 22 when he died. 22 years old. He was an old man. That's the difference between 6,000 years ago and today. The rest, same kinds of problems. Now let's look a little bit at some of the things that happened. You know, we worry today about having the latest iPhone or the latest car or the latest watch or whatever, the latest gizmo. But we forget that it took from 30,000 BC, when we invented stone tools, to 16,000 when we began to use fire. That's 14,000 years. And people were living 20, 25 years. How many generations is that? You know, that's what life was like. Now, I bring you in to 4,000 BC. That's the year that one bad substance came to be developed, opium. Opium is about 6,000 years old on this earth. I hate to tell you. Not a new problem, and we haven't found a solution yet. It's a horrible problem. But let's look at a place, Egypt, the cradle of civilization. 350,000 people lived in Egypt, 4,000 BC. Of those, slaves were 80% of the population. And how did they manage the slaves? They fed them opium. They kept them docile and happy. That's how they control. They didn't give them money. They didn't give them food. So when we talk about addiction, we have to understand that addiction's been around 6,000 years. It's not a new problem, but it is a problem that we need to solve. And in the old days, life expectancy for many years was 20, 25 years old, even for the kings. The kings sometimes got in trouble because they had children that wanted them out of the way. And, you know, it was not a great place to live. It was better than the slaves, but slavery is another problem. Slavery is still all over the world today. But in the old days, 80, 90% of the people were slaves, even in Roman times. So what has been the road to get from 4000 BC, King Tut, the pharaohs, to 1918? And the reason I picked 1918 is twofold. A, it's 100 years ago. So I'm going to look at that whole period. So you're looking at 5,000 years of civilization. Life expectancy improved 7 to 12 years. An old man in 1918 was 32 years old. Now, how many people know in Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet how old Romeo and Juliet were? Anybody want to guess? Yeah. 12 and 13. Now, it's a lot easier to say, till death do us part, when you're 12 and your life expectancy is 20, than when you're 18 and your life expectancy is 85. So, an old person was 20 years old. You guys would all be toothless if you were in these days. So, wars, famine, pestilence, we fought each other. The bubonic plague exterminated 200 million people. But we forget that at that time, there was 5 million people in the world. The flu epidemic of 1918 killed about 100 million people. So life was rotten. We didn't know any better. There was little change. There was little opportunity. And if you were at this level, you were going to stay at that level for the 20 years that you were on this earth. So, here's a couple of pictures. The bubonic plague decimated 50% of Europe. 1918 Spanish flu was a pandemic that killed 100 million people. Interesting sideline, one of the big events in 1918 and 1919, as you know, a lot of Europe, especially France, Portugal, Spain, was very Catholic. And in 1918 was the apparition of the Virgin Mary in Fatima in Portugal. And people from all of Europe went to visit. All those people, a lot of those people got the flu because you had hundreds of thousands of people. That event alone killed over 1 million people. So, you know, it was not a good existence, that I should say. You didn't have problems like, oh, my internet is down. The problems were a little more serious. So we had those thousands of years that life didn't change. Pollution was horrible. Even though the countries weren't industrialized, pollution was horrible because they burned trees, they burned stuff to heat. By the way, some things don't change. This past year, our pollution, our CO2 in California from forest fires exceeded the industrial pollution in California. So, interesting tidbits. But the modern world, I consider the last 100 years. And so I'm going to break that up into what's the modern world till the 50s. And as you drive around here, you still see some homes from the 50s. And then what's happening today. The automobile kick-started toward the end of the year. And, you know, I spent a lot of years in the waste business. I still have a clip from the New York Times in 1908. 1908, that's 110 years ago. And the clip is that the car is a savior to contamination. They didn't call it pollution then. Anybody guess why? New York City, biggest mode of transportation. Horse manure in the streets. The car was going to solve the problems. And then, 1970s, we have to create EPA because we got too many cars polluting big cities. Interesting. But the country and the world in the first 50 years of last century was inventing things that they weren't able to put in place. Now, people here may not know what a well blowout preventer is. But a well blowout preventer is a thing you put on oil wells to prevent the higher pressures from the subsurface to come in and blow the well. It was invented in 1922. The first one was actually installed in the 1970s. There was no pressure from politicians in those years to do anything that would cost money. Liquid fuel rockets were invented in Germany in 1926. Our rockets in America were only invented after World War II, when a number of German scientists came to the States. But actually, as it turned out, a number of those scientists went to Russia. The ones who came to the States, our rockets were going up and coming down. Their rockets were going up, and that's why Russia got satellites earlier than the United States. However, these things were sitting since 1926. Automatic teller machines. Didn't have banks with automatic teller machines in 1939. We were in the middle of a war. Didn't have them till like the 70s. Now, the one that took was the atomic bomb, 1945. So, interesting period of time. Inventions quicken. I will show you this one very fast and some interesting things that happened. Birth control pills, 1957. Cell phones, 1973, the first patent for a cell phone. Nobody had cell phones in 73. I mean, in the 90s we had cell phones, but the most common dialogue was, "I can't hear you." So, I mean, that's really the last 10 years that they've... DNA fingerprinting, 1984. Genetic sequencing, 1998. And think about that one. In 4 years, we did a lot of genetic sequencing. So some of these things began to accelerate the way the invention took hold. And now, as we get into this century, it's a century of tech. And I don't have to tell you the names of the companies. I'm not going to go through them. But I drove a driverless car about 3 years ago. I was at Google. They wanted to show it to me. It's an interesting experience. It puts you down about as low as can be because the car is so smart. They asked me, "Where do you want to go?" The car does. And I said, "Take me to Taco Bell." Not that I like Taco Bell, it came. And the car responds. There's one within 1.9 mile and one within 2.1 mile. Which one do you want? I said, "You choose." So the car chose. The car was a woman, because that's the first thing it asks you. Do you want a man or a woman to drive? So I go into Taco Bell, and as I'm coming into Taco Bell, the car asks me, drive-through or inside? Drive-through. Goes in on the drive-through, and I'm on the driver's chair. I'm not driving. There is a driver I mean, I could take over instantly. That was required. So it opens my window. I asked the person for a glass of tea, got my tea, and the car says, "Thank you. I didn't even have to do that." And then the car puts me to shame when it returns back to Google, and it parks parallel. And then it tells you, we are within 6 inches of the car in front of us, within 9 inches of the curb. Don't need to tell me all that, bragging. But tech is dominating this. From simple things like Uber, dating apps, Amazon, iPhones, to the most complex thing. And so that's where I want to start. And also the huge medical advances that have taken place. My wife just had knee surgery about 3 months ago. The doctor that does the knee surgeries does 800 of these a year. It is a factory line. It is all robotized. They use robots to do the sewing. It's just fascinating, the kinds of things that we're doing. And so all of this is going to make the future brighter. And I couldn't think of a better guy to take a quote from. I promise you I wasn't going to use Aristotle or any of those guys. Michael Jackson. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. The future starts with you, and the future starts now. And first, what are the opportunities for us, the opportunities for you as young students to grow? First, we must begin by feeding the world better. World undernourishment needs to come down. If we can get world fed to where undernourishment is less than 10%, it would be magnificent. Advances in agricultural biotech, crop yields, need to get back. And we need to take the leadership in plant-type work. This would be especially important here in an agricultural, Aggie-type school. But agricultural research and agricultural education, the money spent in China for that today is greater than in the United States. That's a sad commentary. The world will need to produce by 2068, so we look now at the next 50 years, 65% more food than it does today. And guess what? No surprise, the nutritional quality of the food better increase because we've gone way downhill, and now finally in places like America, we're discovering the need for better food quality, more nutrition. And so one of the things that's an opportunity is agriculture. And the reason I talk about it first is that the key in the world, the rest of the world doesn't look like us. The key in the world is feeding the world, eliminating poverty. And to do that, it's not just about contributing money, it's about changing some things. And energy and water supply are related to poverty. If you go into parts of Asia, parts of Africa, families spend part of the day finding paper, finding dung to burn. A is a pollutant, B is a total waste of time. Instead, they ought to be doing something more constructive. So today, 96% of the urban population of the world and 84% of the rural population have access to some clean water. That was a lot worse years ago, but it's not good enough. Sewer systems are not so good. About 68% of the world. We have cities like Flint, Michigan, where the sewer system does not work, and it back contaminates parts of the water supply. China is the largest user of electricity in the world, but they need more. India has growth plans for, China is building 104 nuclear plants as we speak. 104. That compares to 103 in the United States that are operating. So a lot of these countries need to increase the energy because that is the only way you're going to eliminate poverty and get people to become productive. Now, here in the United States, the energy picture in the United States is pretty good because we have a lot of reserves. We have already a lot of proven reserves. We have a lot of technologies. We foster a lot of technology. And cheap energy means that people don't have to spend money in buying gasoline or buying fuel and can use the money for something else. And that's the poor people see it the most. Places like Africa and Nigeria, which actually is a producer of gasoline, gasoline is more expensive than in the United States. In England, gasoline is about three to four times the price it is in California. And California is higher than what you pay here. So energy is another area that we'll see lots of changes and lots of improvements. The key is that the growth in the world is now in Africa and in Asia, not in the United States. The United States is changing the population and the characteristics. And energy needs to be available to support that growth. And if it isn't carbon-free, we're going to have some problems because you're going to have a lot of contamination of the atmosphere. So energy, water, food, basic things that are not going to disappear, part of the growth that we're talking about. Now, we have another area of growth in here, and we can talk about energy and water, but I'm going to move to the quality of health. Healthcare needs to change, and there's gobs of opportunities. I'm excited about Jamie Dimon at Chase, Warren Buffett, and Jeff Bezos getting together to develop a delivery system for pharma that will be cheaper than what we got here today. By the way, drugs in America cost 2 to 3 times more than anywhere else in the world. And they're not manufactured here because of legal issues. They're mostly manufactured in third world countries. And I could spend a whole hour on this, but the cost of drugs, if we can bring the cost of drugs down by 50%, look what it does for healthcare. It can do for healthcare what the country's government cannot do for healthcare, the private sector. And, putting somebody like Jeff Bezos to work on something is a pretty good thing. Anybody knows where Jeff Bezos comes from? Yeah?
Cattle ranch in Texas.
But what was his father? Well, I'll give you a hint. His last name was B-E-S-O-S, Bezos. That's Spanish. His father was Cuban. Came here 2 years after I did. Bezos was adopted by Miguel Bezos. His true name was Jorgensen. He was Swedish. But he was adopted by a Cuban, and he's the world's richest man. So immigrants sometimes can do good things. So we have gone through in the world pestilence, famine, no antibiotics. Now we have moved to where we can extend life by putting in private parts. We can put in knees, we can put in hips, ankles, all kinds of things. And so as we get into the further discussion, the next stage in life, in health, is to look at things that can be mass-produced and where the cost of medicine will come down. I deal with entrepreneurs that are taking companies that provide medical care, that provide medical telemedicine is going to be a thing of the future. There's going to be a lot of things, but it is logical to increase the age of people in this country. Interesting statistic. If you look at our life expectancy in America, it has gone down in the last 2 years. You guys know why? Increased use of opiates. People are dying. It's killing a lot of young people versus the trend that we were on. So that's something we've got to look at. Gobs of opportunities in the medical field. The other areas that we want to talk about is pollution. You know, you hear about, is there climate change? Is there not climate change? What's happening with our environment? Now let me do a quick, how many people here believe there is climate change? That's about 50, 60%. How many people don't believe that there's climate change? Nobody's going to raise your hands. Okay, but let me define it for you a bit. The definition that the scientists use for climate change, there's about 13,000 stations across the world where we've been measuring temperatures for more than 100 years. And it's using that data to see whether there's temperature rise or temperatures go down. Reality is that 75% of the stations show, yes, climate is changing. 25% of the data is more shaky. So there is climate change. There is something that we've been doing about it that nobody gets a lot of attention. The U.S. and the developed world have emitted almost 14 billion tons of CO2 into the atmosphere in 1970. Why I use 1970? That's the year EPA started. The number now is 7.5 billion. It's about half. That's pretty good. But here's where the problem lies. We are now growing China. We are growing Asia. We're growing India. And they have every right to grow. And they're building more plants. But as we did here 50 years, 60 years ago, the first plants that you built are the cheapest, the quickest, coal plants, relatively low quality plants. So where is China, India, and other economies? They're emitting 28 billion tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. By 2030, it's supposed to be 50 billion tons. So how do we solve climate change? We take American and European technology and make it easy for Africa, for India, for China to use that technology so they can bypass and not go to this 50 billion tons, which would kill the world. So we need to collaborate internationally in a lot of these things to bring things out that didn't exist today. And, you know, I think this is one of my favorite parts of this conversation, and that's the fact that what we really need to do is get after poverty eradication. People in Utah have a very beneficial thing over people in the rest of the world, and that's that you have missions. And so you get a picture of the world that a lot of kids your age don't have. Most of the world does not look like this. And until we eradicate poverty, and it's a continuing effort, we are not going to get things to get much better. Extreme poverty in the world has actually gone down from 37% to 10% in the past 25 years. The poorest country in the world are in Africa and North Korea. North Korea is still at 30% or higher. Some people think it's as high as 60%. And that is a reminder of what Egypt was 6,000, 4,000 years ago. We got to get rid of these pockets and somehow find a way to improve life in them. And one area that I want to bring out that most people don't hear about is freedom. How many people think there is slavery in America today? I support a charity, it's called iSanctuary, and they handle about 6,000, mostly women slaves, most between 10 and 16. And from FBI data, about 1,000 of them ever come back from slavery. It's a horrible, horrible problem. And it starts clearly in the world. Slaves in the ancient world outnumber free individuals. But slaves exist today. And we got to have, that is one of the biggest insults to human dignity that you can think of. It's only about 40% of the countries in the world that are essentially free. So this brings me to one word, freedom. And the key to our future as a nation, the key to our future as a world, is to remember that the engine that gives us progress is freedom. The freedom to create new businesses. The freedom to sit here and have a dialogue. A lot of these things that we're talking about here, you couldn't talk about in countries in the world. That is the engine, that's the secret sauce in America. And with that secret sauce, we can create a new world. And that's what I want to take the last 5 minutes of this to get into. First of all, and by the way, this is a blueprint that the gentleman who is the Chief Economic Advisor to the President asked me to provide, and so this is my laundry list. Creating jobs, building our world. Jobs, jobs, and jobs. But to create jobs, you need to focus on providing people with the education and the training for these new jobs. The new jobs are not the jobs that we had 30 years ago. And a revolution in education is needed using technology to build relevance of information. And even the high schools need to work to prepare young people because the universities need to get better quality of students to foster the challenge of the new world. Now, one of the connections here is that we have to ensure both diversity and equality. In an open society where you can bring the best minds in the country, you can have the best results that you can have in terms of ensuring success. If you were to look at the United States of America, the United States of America has had migrations from all kinds of countries. And it is the freedom that exists here that allows these people to succeed. If you look at the U.S. as a country, and if the U.S. were a Hispanic country, it would be the most prosperous country in the world, the largest gross domestic product in the world. The domestic product of the Hispanic workforce in America is 3.5 times that of Mexico and Brazil combined. Why? Because you don't have the corruption level that you have in other countries, you don't have the regulatory frameworks that they have, the currency issues and all the problems. There are more Hispanic-led companies in America today than in the rest of the Hispanic world. A diverse workforce which has combinations of people from different perspectives is a better workforce because it understands the needs of the world. So we have to continue to work on diversity, on equality, on eliminating all the barriers to getting along, whether it's sex or race or beliefs. We need to get better at that. And finally, What is the future world? What is 2068 going to look like? Asia will be the dominant manufacturing and consumption center of the world. The United States, in my opinion, will continue to lead in per capita gross domestic product, entrepreneurship, technology, energy, financials, and the health sector needs to rethink itself. And hopefully we can eradicate poverty, because that is the quickest way to not having climate change problems. You don't solve just a climate change problem, you eliminate the poverty issue. And the problem needs to involve the emerging world. We cannot do it in the United States alone. So what is America going to look like? Well, technology access will be tied to our preeminence, the ability to have the latest technologies. You know, when I went to college, people asked me, why was I in New Mexico? I was studying mathematics. There was 2 big computers in America in those days. One was at Los Alamos, and the other one essentially didn't exist. It was at the CIA. So if you were a mathematician and you needed computation, you could say, I'd go to Harvard or Yale or Columbia. I didn't have a computer. So having access to technology is a key. Also, keeping a free, open society where we can discuss things is a key. Diversity, and an immigration policy that allows this to be the place where things get discovered, because that is where the action is. And so now, let's put yourself, what is your role in the new world? Well, I tell people, you got to turn on your values. You got to innovate. This isn't about doing the same thing that we did 6,000 years ago. Be a principled entrepreneur. You know, we waste a lot of time in America in lawsuits. I've been very fortunate. I've been in executive suites for 40 years plus, and I have never been sued by anybody. Whether it's harassment, external, your values matter. That's the biggest reason to say no to someone, when it affects your own personal values. It's also good to try to contribute something to the betterment of our world. People ask me, why do I do this? Because somebody has to, and I might as well do it myself. We've got to learn to be more tolerant, especially in the last few years. We've become fairly intolerant, and that just shuts down discussions. But don't be afraid, because the future is bright. And I want to quote again from a novel that I finished reading a while ago, which has nothing to do with philosophy. It's actually, again, my favorite author, Dan Brown. And in conclusion, he writes, may our philosophies keep pace with our technologies. May our compassion keep pace with our power. And may love, not fear, be the engine of change. And I can't think of better words to end a discussion of how we're going to make the future better than those. Thank you very much.